Hey, welcome everybody to today's webinar. On behalf of myself, Stuart Discount, CEO of Impact Sourcing CX, and Michael Lamb, Managing Partner of Corporate Advisory Solutions. Welcome to today's discussion, focusing on the current and future state of the receivables management and BPO sector, and the need for global outsourcing to meet the human requirements of US-based companies. We'll focus today on South Africa, which is one of the fastest growing GBS sectors globally. A little bit about my company. Impact Sourcing CX is focused on helping U.S. companies in the collections and consumer services industries locate and select outsourcing partners globally to regions that can provide human capital with excellent English skills and at the same time contribute to the economies of those regions. South Africa has been a focus of for me over the past 4 years, and I've been instrumental in bringing hundreds of jobs to South Africa through several Fortune 100 U.S. companies, from a large-scale receivable management company to one of the U.S. largest airlines, hotels, banks, and shopping companies. They are all currently working in South Africa and experiencing great results. Today's speakers will bring to light the need for outsourcing and how South Africa is a geography well positioned to meet your company's needs. Before I introduce speakers, please note that the webinar is being recorded and a copy will be sent to all participants. Please, if you have any questions, put them in the chat box and we'll get to answer as many as possible. If we don't get to answer all of them, we will actually reply to you by email, as our speakers will be able to answer them. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce Michael Lamb, Corporate Advisory Solutions. Michael is the co-founder and managing partner of Corporate Advisory Solutions, a leading independent investment and merchant banking firm. He has completed 135 M&A engagements totaling over $2.5 billion in deal value within accounts receivable management and related industries. Michael is a FINRA arbitrator and holds Series 7963 and SIE registrations through Finale Securities LLC. Michael and I have known each other for a long time, being through the contact center industry, and it's great to have Michael aboard and actually hosting this. Next is Paul Swainson from the Procura Group. Paul is a dynamic C-suite executive with a track record of driving growth, transformation, and customer experience in industries like BPO, retail, travel, and financial services. With board-level experience, he has led multi-site teams of up to 5,500 people and managed sales exceeding €500 million annually. Paul specializes in embedding customer-focused cultures, building strong partnerships, and leading high-performing teams to deliver measurable results. We also have Connie Gobenzamy, Procura Group, and through the Connect BPS division. Connie is the operations manager at Procura Group's Connect BPS division, bringing over 33 years of leadership in debt collection, business development, and operations across various sectors. Known for her authentic people-first approach, she has led international teams, co-founded a successful startup, and mentors future leaders. Connie focuses on building and empowering workplace cultures while delivering long-term business success through strategic operational leadership. And last, but definitely not least, Tracy Freeman from Believe Consulting. Tracy is the managing member of Believe Consulting with nearly 30 years in GBS, BPO, and CX, and is a global leader in impact sourcing and industry strategy. She has helped position South Africa as a premier offshore destination, introduce COPC standards, and co-develop national BPS standards. Tracy plays key roles in several global initiatives driving DEI, ESG, and sustainability while providing innovative ecosystems and platforms for collaboration and growth across the GBS sector. Tracy is the one who actually introduced me to South Africa when I was CEO of a trade association, and she knows more about South Africa than anybody, and look forward to having her. So, Michael, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Great, Stuart. Thanks for the introduction. It's great to be here. Just by way of just kicking things off, I'm actually down in the sunny state of Florida for a collections conference, so it's good timing. In terms of just where the market is and what's happening, the industry right now is going through a period of what I would call deregulation. We just saw recently, I think as of last week, the CFPB, 90% of their staff is being eliminated or set aside for a period of time. So there's a lot of change, and that's been the governing body that's been focused on collections specifically for a number of years. So there's some real positive movements in the US specifically when it comes to deregulation. But on the other side, we're also expecting the regulation to get picked up by the states. So we're expecting more and more activity at the state levels when it comes to compliance and regulatory activity. That's kind of the big component. The second item that we're dealing with in the marketplace is just simply economic trends. We're hearing all of the issues and dynamics that are going on with Trump right now with tariffs. Every day it's a new issue, but we're starting to see more and more delinquency across every end market. Every industry vertical is seeing an increase in delinquencies. And that leads me to my third point. The biggest issue when I go around and I do these webinars and I speak at the conferences and trade shows is labor, labor, labor. We still have historically low unemployment in the United States, which drives the need to find humans to work in these industries, whether it's the collection space or the contact center area or other verticals too. And so as a result of that, companies today have, and as well as their clients, have become more and more open and receptive to talking about nearshore and offshore delivery strategies. A lot of that it was also a result of COVID, coming through the COVID period, but you do hear more and more from large banking institutions, fintechs, telco providers, that where they're even asking, do you have redundancy or capabilities overseas? And one of the particular countries that has come up more and more, just simply due to its similarities, it's from a language perspective, we keep hearing more and more about South Africa, which is why I think from a timing perspective, it's great, Stuart, that we put this together, because you've got a lot of industry change that's happening alongside technology advancements that are opening up people's eyes to other countries besides India and the Philippines. So it's really exciting to hear from the folks we have on the panel today about some of the market trends that they're experiencing and seeing in South Africa, and where there are advantages for companies to work when it comes to collections in that country specifically.
Michael, let me ask you this question. So, during COVID, because of the center shutting down, there was a lot of remote work. But the last ones to do that, I think, were the financial institutions, because with all the requirements, the regulations, and basically, a lot of consumer data that they have privy. Is there a change in there? Are they more apt now, not just offshore, but are they also more apt now to do remote?
Yeah, Stuart, I'll go back. Like I remember 15 years ago, well before COVID, I wrote an article about the challenges with work at home for collections. And after COVID came, the first month or two, you saw a major shift in thinking when it comes to work at home that I never expected to see, specifically with the banks. A lot of the banks during COVID and got very comfortable with work at home because we were all forced to. So you saw that not just occur here in the US, but globally. And so there was a movement for collections to have work at home capability. And still, that work at home hybrid methodology or thought process is still there today. A lot of the institutions are comfortable with the concept, whereas before COVID, it wasn't even an option because of privacy, data security, and every other dynamic you could think of when it comes to the collections workflow.
Okay, that's what I've been noticing as well. And so,
Stuart, can I just jump in 1 second on
sure,
that point?
yes.
Yeah. Yes. I think it's really quite interesting because COVID, everyone on this webinar will have stories of how terrible it was, how horrible it was. but in a strange way, it actually forced some elements of evolution. And therefore, as a working in the outsourcing industry, yes, I'm based in South Africa, but whichever geo you're in, suddenly people looked at things a bit differently. And that because there was a need to, they couldn't necessarily source their people into their normal contact centers, whether onshore or not. And therefore, people looked at things differently. And through the international world of BPO, it really was a positive shift because people had to think of things differently.
Yeah,
Yeah,
but
and
Paul,
I
like
think,
in collections though, they just weren't until COVID came around, it was not something that was built. You know how in the
Yeah.
call center space globally, there was always a few companies that were doing work at home for the gig economy and like figuring different things out that way. It just wasn't apparent in the US collections market. And obviously with that shift, that's opened up the doors to looking at, labor overseas
Yeah.
and getting the creditors, the banks, the telcos comfortable with that approach was very difficult before, but now not so much. They're all getting more and more comfortable with a global delivery platform, which is exciting to see with all the technology advancements that are coming out too.
Yeah, 100%.
and geography actually plays an important part in that, because I think what happened at the beginning, well, actually during COVID, the Philippines and India struggled. They struggled with connectivity from a remote standpoint. And actually, South Africa is one of those countries that actually excelled. And I think that going back to that time, I was working closely with Tracy and some of the people from BPSA. That was a strength. The connectivity in the remote areas that they had. And so, Tracy, I don't know if you want to chime in on that, because I know the government there has made a lot of, this is an important industry for them, both collections and BPO.
No, 100%, Stuart. Thank you. And I think actually you took one of the last flights out of South Africa just before COVID hit, actually. So you were
Yes, I did. Yes, I did.
And it was a bizarre time globally, but in South Africa, it actually landed up being a silver lining for this sector. And literally, we were on a call. I mean, Paul, I think you were on that call, sort of 1:30 in the morning, the day before formal lockdown. And the great news was that we could actually say to the CEOs of the BPO companies, guys, we've been given the thumbs up, you're allowed to carry on operating. And there was a bit of a fight with government, because they obviously saw this as something that was going to take out an entire community if we let everybody go to work. And what happened was, because the industry works so closely together in South Africa, both from a public perspective, but private as well, is that we managed to actually identify and convince government that if we put certain protocols in place, we'd be able to keep our people safe. Those that could work from home, we would. And we literally, like we did worldwide, we had guys running home with desktops and, all the rest of it to get a work from home scenario up and running. But South Africa, we bandied together, and government realized the strength of the industry. So the embarrassing truth for South Africa is that we have an exceptionally high unemployment rate, but that in itself is a double-edged sword. It's an opportunity for the likes of the US. Not only that, but when clients actually come through to South Africa and they engage with our people and our talent, they realize this depth of capability that we have. And I've had a number of financial services individuals actually coming through going, wow, just literally chatting to the man on the street. They didn't realize the depth of knowledge that they have when it comes to banking, when it comes to, the difference between debt and credits, etc. So we've seen a lot of growth specifically for the financial services sector, traditionally from the UK, but more and more so from the US. But during hard lockdown, because of this partnership with public and private sector, we actually saw 17,500 new jobs being outsourced to South Africa during that period, which is huge. And it's a sector that we've been trying to push for the longest time and showcase to government that there's an opportunity to bring young, talented, unemployed youth into the world of work, which is critical for us and something sorely needed in our country. And the year of 2020 actually proved that. And we've just seen growth upon growth at about 22% year on year for the last 5 years in our sector. So much so that government has always had incentives for the industry. We launched the first set around 2006. So we've iterated that over the years, and we're about to relaunch the next set of incentives. But over and above that, they've now realized the opportunity to not only bring our unemployed youth into the world of work and practice impact sourcing, and South Africa is the birth point of impact sourcing. We launched it here in 2016. But equally, they've seen the opportunity to reskill, upskill, and future skill our talent. And they've called it a priority sector. So there's a lot of initiatives that are in place at the moment between public sector and private sector, working cohesively, collectively, towards a common goal of creating 500,000 jobs by 2030 in the sector. The exciting thing that we really see, and again, COVID really opened this up, the US has always dabbled, or has dabbled a little bit in South Africa. We've always had a stronger relationship with the UK and Australia. But during 2020, the US was forced to look at alternates. And as one success story grew, clients and investors in the US were obviously chatting to one another and said, guys, we've outsourced to South Africa. We did it during hard lockdown, haven't even been there, haven't met the guys besides on a webinar on the phone, and we've had some sort of virtual walk around their centers, and actually we're really, really impressed with the results. And that comes back again to the South African personality, which is filled with empathy, the ability to speak English in a way that is enjoyed and easily understood by global English-speaking communities, but there's a strong sense of empathy and an ability to understand and speak off script, actually have a conversation with customers, which is really, really critical. I've actually heard it said by a number of BPOs, and I'd love to see what Connie and Paul have to say, but the worst thing you can do for a South African agent is force them to stick to script. Obviously, they're going to comply, they'll tick the boxes, but don't force them to keep to script. They like to have a conversation and actually have a human-to-human connection. So, I mean, over and above, having the government and private sector working closely, having this abundance of amazing available talent that's hungry. They need the jobs, they want the jobs. It's not just a stepping stone for them. They want to grow into alternate positions. So they may come in as an agent and excel there, but they're looking to become a trainer, a product specialist, a quality assessor, etc. They really are hungry to learn and to grow and to really embrace the brands that they're servicing. But we have phenomenal infrastructure. And as you said, Stuart, during COVID, we actually opened up the spectrums to allow for ease of access, because obviously so many people are now working from home. There's a strong strategy around growing not only our tier 1 environments, and we have some obvious candidates there, which would be Cape Town, Durban, Johannesburg, and Tshwane, which is Pretoria. But equally, we're growing out our tier 2 environments. So South Africa has provinces or states in the US, and we have the Eastern Cape, which is growing out, and we're seeing a lot of growth there. So we have a great spread of opportunity for clients and BPOs to set up in South Africa or to be serviced by our phenomenal BPOs that we have here. The other thing that South Africa can really brag about is that we have a maturity and a depth of knowledge, having played in this space over the last 20 years, having learned through the hard knocks, being supported by the global community to say this is what we're looking for. But we have a number of big global BPO brands that are here, but equally we have a number of really strong domestically born brands that understand how to work with the local community, but equally how to service the global community. So that's really definitely a strength for us that we're seeing. So yeah, we really are seeing a lot of, it's an exciting time for us in the sector. And it's something that if you had have mentioned, GBS, BPO or contact center 10 years ago on the street, everyone would have looked to you and said, I don't know what you're talking about. Now it's something you see in our news. It's something that if you chat about on the street, individuals who want to be employed in the sector are excited. We have a lot of initiatives that they can go and get upskilled, recruited through, trained, and get into the world of work. They're seeing success for their colleagues, their peers. And then from an impact sourcing perspective, we are literally seeing the shift on individuals, on their families, and then a literal upliftment of communities that they're residing within. But I'm going to pause there because there's obviously a lot more that we can chat about with the country and see what my colleagues have to say.
Well, it's interesting because just from a personal note, so I visited South Africa, and I was CEO of a trade association, and we met in the 3 major cities, and we did some webinars on compliance and things and like that. And what struck me most was two things. One is the entrepreneurial spirit of the owners. I mean, they knew, they've been servicing the UK, they've been servicing Australia. So this was not new to them. What was new to them was the US and the US market. And during that COVID period, to grow by 17,000 jobs without being able to travel, that was amazing. Normally, let's face it, the vendor management teams, they go out, they kick the tires, they interview the employees, the agents, the supervisors. They couldn't do it because they couldn't travel, but they did it. They made the change. And the second thing that really drew me was the actual people themselves. With a very large workforce of unemployed people and people who had never worked before. I mean, these people needed to not only learn that sector of the business they're in, but they had to learn how to work, how to dress, how to go to the office, how to talk to people. And we went to a couple training centers, and I'm telling you, I had goosebumps watching these kids. These jobs were so important to them at that time, and they still are. They could be living in a house of 9 people, and no one's working. And they get that one job, and they're the king of the household now, and they're not leaving. I mean, they're putting all their effort into that job because it means so much to them and their family. So that's what really struck me, that I have not seen, and I've been traveling, I've been in the business for 40 years, and I've been everywhere when it comes to contact centers. Never, ever have seen that kind of agent enthusiasm and employee enthusiasm that I ever saw. And that is, again, as I said earlier, I brought a major airline there that has over 1,000 agents on their project now. A collection company, most of you probably on the webinar today are in the receivables business. They are doing phenomenal with over 100 seats and doing well. A large hotel chain is there and just experience great results, all because of the people. And that's what it is.
Yeah, it may sound a bit cheesy, but honestly, I really do maintain it's the South African sun or the African sun that helps our people always smile. There's no reason to be grumpy. You wake up in Africa, you wake up in South Africa, and yeah, you see the views around you, the people around you. And we have a saying in South Africa, it's called Ubuntu, and it means I am because we are. And there really is the sense of community, the sense of spirit. So what you reference, and this is a sad reality, we're well aware of it. There is one individual in a household that is feeding between 6 and 11 people. We know that. But it doesn't mean suddenly because they're earning a check that they're going to go out and party. It means that they're now going to support their siblings to go to school. They're going to help mom actually, build a house that she's never had. And they're going to uplift themselves and go back to school if they couldn't afford to before. So there really is this hunger to want to do better and to want to support. So I'm glad that you experienced that. It's what we like to hear.
Tracy,
Yeah, and I think
it's Michael. I just had a quick question for you. Like, as you think about this world of the collections, like when you think about the labor and the access to labor that exists in South Africa, how do you think it marries up? It sounds like it's a very positive for the act, because this is different than a inbound customer care call, right? You're calling up somebody that's been delinquent for 90 to 120 days on their whatever kind of bill it is.
Yeah, 100%. So, Michael, I'm definitely going to pass over to Paul and Connie because they're closer to the ground with us. But what I will say, and again, I'm going to use the word empathy. The individuals that are going to be serving the customers that are doing debt collection, they themselves have been in debt. They understand the pains of what that feels like. And there's a genuine empathy when it comes to the fact that Tracy can't pay a bill. So how do we solution around this? So rather than an aggressive, angry engagement, it's really a solutioning engagement with genuine sympathy and empathy to the call is going to be my response. But I'd love to see what Connie and Paul have to say.
Michael, let me chip in, and then I'll hand over to Connie in 2 seconds. But I think simplistically, there's a couple of things. One, 100% what Tracy's talking about, the cultural affinity, the empathy, the accent, the ability to have a conversation. If you're trying to, if I put it bluntly, get someone to pay, you need to have a conversation. And in that conversation, you've got to understand their challenges and be empathetic, but not be batted off and take an easy response. You've got to have enough, get up and go to ensure that you drive it to a conclusion that works for everyone. So I think, if you look at South Africa, I mean, using our business as an example, and, we're a team of 2,500 people. We've been doing collections for over 30 years, working with partners such as banks, working with retailers, working with a number of big players. And ultimately, though, people don't not pay a bill because they don't, well, most people don't not pay a bill because they don't want to. It's probably because they can't. And actually, in relation to our interactions, we just got to make sure that they're paying the bill that we're talking to them about. That we're collecting the money, because they've probably got a few people who want to collect money. We've got to make sure that they're collecting for us. Connie's been doing this for years and has been working with the US for years as well. So, Connie, what's your perspective?
So, just going back to what Tracy mentioned about our people. South Africa, we're the Rainbow Nation. So, we come with a multitude of diverse cultures, and our people are just out there. They are passionate when they get into the field of wanting to work, especially when it comes to debt collections. Looking at Procera, we've got a training school where we can take people that have matriculated, put them into this field, train them, upskill them, and get them onto the dialer. So these guys are looking for stability. And when it comes to our Procera group, attrition is like really small because it's hard to find work out there. So when they're in this position of doing debt collections, we just need to, from the company point of view, is to ensure that we are up to date with regulations and that we keep on investing in our people, and because they are our people, we are here because of them. So we want to make sure that we can keep them upskilled and regulated in all aspects of debt collections. It comes with, they come with a variety of culture. The language is English. That's the first language. And they are quick learners. They are problem solvers. They are technology savvy. So brilliant people to work with.
Connie, how many years have you been doing collections yourself into the States?
I'd say about 10 years.
And ultimately, how do you find some of the differences state by state? I mean, as a non, I'm obviously British, you can tell by my accent, apologies to everyone. But, the US, as everyone says, is like 50 different countries rather than one country. Each state it's just a bit different. How do you find that?
No. It comes with its challenges. However, we've got partners in the US. We work very closely with our clients, and wherever they are based, we have got the training material, which they share with us. We have very close relationships where our clients' trainers, as well as our trainers, would get together and do transfer skill sharing. So that's how we keep ourselves up to date with the regulation.
Perfect.
What's interesting, one of the important parts of the South African experience, I guess, is the actual accent. So Tracy and Connie are from South Africa, and this is the pleasant accent that actually comes across, where it's understandable, very understandable. You're not, asking as a consumer, what you say, which is definitely a benefit. Accents do make a difference in people's attitudes. And also, if it's not a good call and they just can't understand it, it's not good. So the licensing issues in the U.S. I mean, can you explain a little bit how Procera handles that, and something about you do have a U.S. partner? Paul,
go for it, Connie. Yeah, go for it, Connie.
Sorry, Stuart, can you just repeat your question, please?
With some of the regulations and the licensing, how have you guys handled that? And you know, because that has been a challenge for the industry. Outsourcing third-party debt collection has been a challenge.
Yes. So with our US partners, well, they've got the licenses, and our agents who are based in South Africa, we're working straight off their platforms, their systems, and the client will acquire the licenses and share them with us. Other than that, when it comes to the regulations, we just ensure that from a compliance point of view, that our compliance team is up to date and meets all the requirements and meets the expectations at the end of the day, which is like absolutely important. So licensing from our US partners, they will make all those arrangements and work with our South African team to ensure that everything is in order.
And I think just to add as well, I think it's important to understand, you know, as a business, we've got a large compliance team, large learning and development team, and obviously the relevant checks, governance, rigor that goes with that. So we wouldn't always expect to be, and Stuart, you referenced another partner that you worked with and brought to South Africa. That's why we like to work with an onshore partner. So we're giving the South African accent, the South African, you know, you touched upon earlier, Michael, about labor. You know, we're giving that South African labor, can do, and delivery, and working with a partner in the US to ensure that they work hand in hand with us to enable us to deliver in relation to compliance. So it means that you get the sort of best of both worlds, simplistically. Great quality people. Let's not beat around the bush, at a far better price point than you would be paying onshore as well. You know, price is obviously a piece, but don't expect because you're paying less that you're going to get a worse performance. In fact, where we've got like-for-like comparisons, we will often outperform onshore US partners, which is quite ironic if you think about it, because they'll come to us as a partnership and often we'll outperform them. But that's often the best way of making things work quite simply, is working in that partnership style approach, so that it's not just something thrown over the wall and saying, you know, go for it, you guys in South Africa. We work hand in hand, shoulder to shoulder.
Yeah, I think maybe just to add on to a couple of things that you've asked there, Stuart, and that Paul and Connie have mentioned. So from South Africa's perspective, we have a very rigorous business environment. There's a lot of checks and balances when it comes to operating a business in South Africa. It's not the Wild West. So legislation compliance is not foreign to any established entity, which would be the entities that you would be speaking to. So adding on additional requirements from a client's perspective, wherever they are in the world and whatever it is that they need to have in place, often you'll find that the BPO operators that you're working with already have a lot of those legislative or compliance pieces already in place. It may be industry specific, you know, if you're looking at healthcare, for example, versus financial services, that you may have to add on a few extras. So that is not something that is a challenge for South African entities. And Stuart, you mentioned earlier, and it's actually something that you don't realize as a country or as its people or business until it's pointed out to you, but South Africans are very innovative. They don't see problems, they see opportunities to improve. There is a local saying, but it's an Afrikaans saying, and I'll just say it anyway. It's a boer maak 'n plan, which means a farmer makes a plan. Where it comes from, I have no idea, but that's the South African way, is, you know, we make a plan. If there's a challenge, it's not a challenge. How do we solution it? We see it as something fun that we can solve. And that goes through not only your business environment, but your people that are working in it. And often you will find your actual agents and your staff. And again, it comes down to the culture in South Africa, where it's obviously, you know, there's hierarchies that are in place, but your agents are able to go up to management and team leads and even the CEO, which I know in some environments is not the norm, to say, I've got an idea. I've seen something, or I've had clients, and I've had 3 of them, complaining about the same thing. I've got an idea of how we can fix this. So you will see solutioning coming from bottom up and top down. And when Paul mentions that there's a partnership with clients and with brands that choose to outsource to South Africa, it genuinely is that they want to see success for all. So it's not just, putting words to it. You genuinely see that happening, which is quite exciting.
And just to add on to that, Tracy, I think, I've been part of a journey throughout my career. I've been in this industry for a fair few years, where, suddenly when we talked earlier about COVID, it sort of started the snowball rolling in relation to South Africa. So prior to that, we didn't have some of those big US players. Now we have, whether it's on a collections basis or a CX basis, doesn't really matter, but you're talking major financial services businesses, big in the credit card world specifically. We've got the world's biggest retailers coming to South Africa, big travel, tourism, hospitality. Stuart, you mentioned it earlier. Again, work with partners in South Africa. All of these, by the way, don't necessarily work with Procera. They work with other companies as well. But as a country, they're coming here because of what we can deliver. And it's just to back up on the point that Tracy said a second ago. If you look and using Procera as an example, we work with every single one of the major high street banks in South Africa doing collections activity for them. These books come from, whether it's I've not paid for my car, whether it's I've not paid on my loan, whatever the element may be. And we work very actively to ensure that not only do we collect, but we collect in a way that the consumer is happy. Now, you may think that I've been drinking something, because it's like, who pays a bill and says I'm happy at the end of it? But ultimately, we've got to get that balance right, because we fully understand that often that representation links back to the brand. And therefore, we've got to collect the money. We've got some key criteria and KPIs that we have to hit, but we need to do it in a way that works for both the consumer, the original party, and ourselves.
So we have plenty of time. Wasn't sure we needed an hour for this, but there's no questions in there. Michael, some closing thoughts maybe, or additional thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, when I think about, and this is more for Paul, like there in the US market, the debt buying companies, the ones that are purchasing the receivables from the banks and the fintechs and the buy now, pay laters, a lot of them are looking at offshore, nearshore strategies. Why?
Yeah.
Because they own the paper, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they're able to have more control over media, documentation, how they're going to handle the process. I'm curious to hear, like, have you worked or any experience on the debt buying side versus more the agency side? I mean, but the debt buying segment right now is growing significantly. So we're seeing that as a big opportunity.
Yeah, and I think great question, Michael. I think that ultimately we as Procera have done historical debt buying, aren't debt buying at the moment, but wouldn't say that we wouldn't go into debt buying in the near future. It's one of those things that we're looking at. There are players in South Africa who are doing physical debt buying in relation to the US as well. And I understand 100% why it's growing. I had the pleasure of being at RMAI a couple of months ago over in Vegas. But ultimately, we see the opportunity in whatever element that debt takes and how we collect in relation to that debt. So whether it's we, through whatever funding mechanism, purchase the debt, or we're working on an agency basis, and we do a lot of work in relation to an agency basis. But simplistically, ultimately, it's a similar style execution at the coal face, as they say, in relation to how we model it and how we do it and how we work it. Different thing altogether. And we see real opportunity on that, an opportunity specifically. I understand why the debt buying market is growing significantly. It was really good conversations over at RMAI. And ultimately, we do, in fact, going all the way through, we do first party collections as well. So we're in that position where we're collecting on behalf of the brand. So you name it, whether it's first party, third party, whatever element of how distressed that debt is, it's important that the vast majority of that can be serviced out of South Africa and a company like Procera.
No, that's great. Paul, the other question I had was the other area that's growing a lot in collections is legal collections. So where there's a law firm that's involved. And so there's back office legal work that is being outsourced to countries like South Africa, as well as other, they're not doing the legal work per se, but they're doing the functions that it takes to litigate against the consumer or business.
Yeah. And again, that exists. That it's, ultimately, our job as any form of outsourced partner is to understand what you need, not yourself personally, Michael, but you as a potential client, and understand exactly what we need to do to conclude that. And we come across a number of partners who need that legal element. And as you said, it's not litigation itself. It's I always, it's like, and I don't wish to belittle it in any way, shape, or form. Like a joke, it's sort of, strong admin. It's realistically, it's a case of doing certain legal requirements, which we can do to ensure that we basically are compliant and follow down the process. So there's more likelihood that we collect.
So, Paul, maybe just to add on to that, and it's a great question, Michael. I was actually going to reference that. So, South Africa is lesser known for what we call our professional and shared services sector. And we've got a massive professional and shared services sector. Part of that would be LPO, legal process outsourcing. So, when we look at the debt collection environment, we actually look at that as the customer credit lifecycle management process from a South African perspective. And there are a number of entities that have that LPO aspect. They may have the front-end contact center itself that may do the initial engagements. They've probably brought in some tech and AI now to help support that process, but they can go right through the process on behalf of the brand of the client to actually go through to full collection, including whatever aspects are allowed to, from a legal perspective, be outsourced to an alternate geography to help close. And we've got a number of LPOs that actually support, so much so that we actually have some global legal brands that have set up their centers in South Africa to do that support, and we've got them spread around the country. Others have actually been legal firms that have then either started up their own contact center or purchased a contact center to have that voice component, that front end component, or entities like Procera that can actually work right through to end stage. So it's something that's not broadly known, but South Africa is actually very strong when it comes to the professional and shared services side of things. So definitely something that we do not shy away from whatsoever.
It's great to hear, because the legal side is growing too here in the US on the collection side. You're seeing a lot more accounts flowing into a legal channel. Paul, let me throw into maybe to Connie too, another question that I know people that are going to be listening to this are thinking about. Collections has been slower to transition into the technology world. I mean, literally only a few years ago were they finally allowed to email or even text a consumer. I mean, it's bonkers when you think about it. Like, email is archaic at this point, but they finally got access to using email. So as this industry continues to evolve, and you use the buzzword of AI that's used everywhere, this industry will be AI enabled too, just like it's happening on the contact center side. Curious to hear, Paul, I know the answer is we can work with anything, but as this industry continues to evolve more with AI, where do you see different angles for companies that are in South Africa? How can they be helpful in that capacity?
Yeah, and I think simplicity in my experience, as well as where we are in relation to Procera, I'll give you a great example. We're currently working with a company in relation to a bot that does very basic collections. So let's not confuse matters here. This is not a complicated interaction, but it is a robotic agent. It's voice, you wouldn't know. Now, our point is that simplistically, if you imagine, And I go to all these conferences and everyone, you've either got the people looking at AI as doom and gloom, or you've got people looking at it as opportunity. I think it's really, there's two distinctly different things. There's one, how it helps in relation to that customer interaction at whatever stage, and what it does, and you come back to the quality, and again, I won't necessarily talk Brasera, I'll talk South Africa. The quality of the agent in South Africa means that you can have a more complex conversation. So why not have a bot assisting in relation to, so we've got a trial running at the moment, not in the US, I would emphasize, in South Africa, where we're actually using a bot to collect those really simple elements. And then it basically frees up the human to ensure, and then they're actually supported by humans. So what happens is you've got 3 bot interactions that has 1 agent. So the agent's like a supervisor for those 3 bots. I know it sounds a bit funny, an agent supervising a robot, but anyway, that's the sort of style approach. But then on the other side, when we talk about AI, you've also got other elements. So you've got everything from, you know, so like, you name it, we work with on voice analytics to ensure that that quality and that ability to say, in the olden days, you look from a QA basis and go, we'll do dip checks or maybe randomly check 1 or 2 things. Now we have the ability to utilize absolutely world-class call analytics to say, you know what, we're going to check everything, and then we're going to use the humans to deep dive. They're going to analyze the outputs and deep dive and go, is there a problem, isn't there a problem, etc., and how do you improve performance? You go back, I was going to say 10 years, 5 years, it was predominantly people doing everything. And again, I'm not saying it's taking away people, I'm just saying the people are doing something slightly different because the mass is being done by the people. And then the last thing
Paul, I just to jump in there, like when I was at this call center conference last week, half the room were AI QA companies.
Yeah.
10 years ago, that didn't exist.
Yeah, 100%. And then the last thing, which again, people sometimes forget, but AI in itself helps in relation to things such as gamification. And for those on the call who don't understand in relation to what gamification is, simplistically, if you go back to the olden days, you know, or you watch, you know, and you'll see whiteboards and you'll see people high-fiving when you hit a target, or you'll see, you know, that engagement level that makes it a fun environment. It's still a fun environment, but now companies like ourselves utilize gamification tools. We use an amazing tool called Centrical, but you know, there's lots out there again. And within the tech stack, our belief is go out and find the best, you know, do a deal with them, bring it into the tech stack, and then you keep evaluating, because the best may be the best in 2025, but in 2028, it may not be the best. So we may need to switch in relation to that technical partner. But in that tech stack, people sometimes forget that actually, what can we do to empower the person, because that person's still there, with the world of AI to enable them to do a better interaction and fundamentally come back to what we said right at the beginning, have a better conversation. And so to me, there's those 3 things. There's the robot who's going to talk to consumers. There's the piece in relation to QA specifically. And then there's the piece empowering the people. And that takes a lot of ways, by the way, whether it's recruitment, training, you name it. But I gave the example about engagement, stuff along those lines. So that gives you a bit of a suite, if that really answers the question, Mike.
If I could just add on,
go ahead, Connie. Yeah, go ahead.
So we've got, you know, these different treatments. We've got, like Paul mentioned, we've got human, we've got emails, we've got texts, we've got the bot. We've in our team, in our Brasera team, we've got transition agents, and they literally are sitting there and going through the emails that the client is asking them to go through. So they are specially trained to go through, filter the willingness from the customer who wants to pay, get them to commit. Earlier on, you mentioned the legal side. We are also doing that. We don't have any lawyers doing it. We've got agents, we've got human. However, what the client wants from these agents on the legal side is how they actually getting the customer to commit is using their understanding, their empathy, building rapport. Once the customer commits, we want to help them, we want to support them and get them to pay it off. So going back to the agents themselves and going back in history to based on Procera, we are debt collections through and through. It's in our DNA. And it's all about the way we train our people, whether it's on the transition side that they're doing the AI, or whether they're actually sitting and doing a legal call. It's all about helping that customer and treating them with respect. That's me.
Answer your question, Michael.
It did. It
Good,
did,
good,
Stuart.
good.
Good.
Stuart, if
Yeah,
I may,
yes.
if we've kind of moved away from the technical piece as well, for those that haven't been to South Africa before, I think it seems like a faraway land and it's really difficult to get to. So it's actually not. I mean, we've got direct flights out of Newark, out of Atlanta, right into South Africa. We have a number of international airports, so you can land directly in Johannesburg, directly in Cape Town, or you can take an hour's flight from Cape Town to Durban, which is beautiful, quick and easy. I mean, you've hardly even sort of, gone up before you're going down again. It's really navigatable, so it's easy to get around in South Africa. So the perception that it's difficult to get to, what am I going to see when I get there? We have world-class infrastructure. We've got a number of brands that are here that those in the US that haven't been here before and haven't looked into it, they'd actually be amazed how many US brands and global brands actually exist and thrive or are HQ'd on behalf of EMEA in South Africa, servicing sort of a broader EMEA community from here. And I really just encourage anyone that hasn't been here, besides coming through to see it from a business perspective, which is having fun while doing business, it's also from a personal perspective. There, you're spoiled for choice, and it's really easy just to get to engage with the beauty of South Africa. Our beautiful wildlife, our gorgeous oceans and beachfronts, wonderful wine that we have. Our food is outstanding. And as Paul said earlier, it's really, really affordable when you're coming here on the US dollar. So I really would encourage anyone that hasn't been before, come for business and enjoy a holiday, or come for a holiday, and I can guarantee you're going to stay for business anyway.
Yeah, one of the things I've always said, if I can get a potential client to visit South Africa, the deal's closed. Okay, because there's nothing from all the stuff that you're talking about, Tracy, how beautiful it is, the things to do. I mean, but once they talk to the people and see it, it just, there's no reason. And again, they're long flights, but they're direct flights, and that's that's the good thing, and they're not that expensive actually, at least sometimes. Yeah,
you'll make up for it with the cheap wine and the cheap food. Trust me.
Exactly. Some great hotels too. I mean, the hospitality there is really fantastic. It really is. They appreciate visitors. Absolutely.
Yes, we do.
Any other comments before we wrap up here? So
Well,
we're going to.
Paul's a really good example. He came to do business and he stayed. We still haven't managed to get rid of him. So, proof's in the pudding.
And I married a South African lady as well. So it's like I'm sort of semi-South African. Okay?
Yeah.
Not every client can come and marry a South African lady. Okay, just be crystal clear.
Yeah. So we're going to send this out, and we're going to include contact information for those people who are listening. And you can contact, any of us about opportunities in South Africa. I mean, and good questions for Michael, on anything that we've talked about. It's great. I appreciate all of you for participating. Michael, thanks for hosting this with me. To me, it's been 4 years working with people in South Africa, and it's been really, really an enjoyable experience for the most part. It really has been. So Perfect. If there's nothing else, thank you, and we'll give 6 minutes back to our folks. Okay.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Okay. Right. Bye, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.